I didn't understand how much of my life was made of light until the night it left me. One slip on the back stairs, rain-slick cedar, arms full of laundry, the kind of careless hurry you allow yourself in your own home, and the world smeared into charcoal. After the ER, the specialists, and the "these things happen" speech, my days shrank to sounds and memory, the soft whir of my old fridge, the loons on Lake Harrington at dusk, the way the third stair from the bottom complains under a careful foot. People think blindness is only darkness. It's also weight. Every step is a calculation. Every room asks, "Do you know me well enough to trust me?" 3 weeks later, I sat in an ophthalmology chair in a clinic that smelled like antiseptic and printer paper while Dr. Patel peeled back the gauze. "Deep breath, Mrs. Hart," he said. Kind voice, efficient hands. "Let the eye find the room before you try to make sense of it." I obeyed, one breath, then another. At first, the world was milk. Then the milk stirred and separated into shapes, and the shapes into edges, and an edge into the exact silver of the doctor's name-pin. Tears came hot and happy. The nurse, Callie, with freckles like someone sprinkled cinnamon, laughed softly. "I always bring tissues for this part," she said, offering one as if she's done this 1,000 times and still loves it. A ceiling tile, a fluorescent fixture, the rounded shoulder of a woman in blue scrubs. Each thing took its turn, becoming real. Then the room widened. The blown-up poster of an eye cross-section, the window beyond it, February light over the clinic parking lot, brittle and miraculous. I didn't try to speak. For a long time, I'd spoken only to narrate what I could not see. In that moment, the seeing did the talking. "Vision is not a switch," Dr. Patel said, testing me with a light. "It's a dial. We'll keep turning it up with the drops. You'll be light-sensitive and tired. No heroics." "Tired I can do," I answered, and my voice sounded new to me, as if it, too, had been under gauze. They walked me through the boring, blessed details, follow-ups, ointments, the ridiculous, oversized sunglasses that make everyone look like a very rich bee. When they wheeled me to the curb, Callie tucked the appointment card in my purse and squeezed my hand like a granddaughter might. The clouds had torn open while I was inside. A narrow band of blue sat above the strip mall, immodest as a neon sign. I stared as if I'd never seen sky before. Maybe I hadn't. Not like that. I could have called my daughter, Grace, to pick me up. She'd been living at my place to help out since the fall. Grace and her husband, Cole, with their wheeled suitcases and streaming passwords and loud opinions about what I should do with the house. But I wanted one small, uncomplicated decision that was mine. So I called a rideshare. The driver was a chatty retiree named Norma who loved to narrate. "Watch that guy. Never seen a turn signal in his life? Ooh, do you smell that? Cinnabon at the mall. Legalized temptation." I let her voice run like a radio in the background and pressed my bee-glasses to my nose, pinching away tears whenever they threatened the drops. We turned off the highway toward Maple Point, where the lake sits like a coin in a palm. My cedar-sided house stood in its old place at the curve. Front porch, 2 Adirondack chairs, wine chimes I bought the summer Mark died. The water beyond was pewter, with a seam of white where ice clung to the far shoreline. Beautiful in that stubborn, Midwestern way. Not here to impress, here to endure. "Nice spot," Norma said, easing to the curb. "It is," I answered, surprised by how proud my voice sounded. I tipped too much, waved her off when she tried to hand it back, and took the walk to my door slowly, on purpose. The porch boards had gone soft where the snow pooled. I made a note to ask someone to replace them before spring. The chimes announced me in their minor key. Through the front window, I could make out the glow of the kitchen pendants and the bright, reckless red of the dish towel Grace insists pops on camera when she films her cooking videos. On the threshold, I paused. For 3 weeks, I'd only known the outline of my daughter's face by touch, the way she'd lean in and kiss the air near my cheek, the scent of her grapefruit shampoo. I pictured her now, eyes wide, a hand to her mouth, laughter breaking. "Mom, you can see?" And me, answering with something theatrical, because why not? "Only your good side." I had rehearsed a dozen small jokes in the dark, crumbs leading me back to a version of normal. My hand hovered over the knob. Maybe I should tell her slowly. Maybe I should sit in my chair with a cup of tea and say, "Grace, there's something wonderful I want to share," and watch the news ripple outward from her face to Cole's, and then to the house, and then to the lake itself. I wanted that. I wanted the shared miracle. But the weeks had also taught me something unromantic. Information is power, and gratitude, my favorite old habit, can be a leash if you hand it to the wrong person. I told myself I'd take 1 minute, just one, to stand inside my own entryway and see before I said anything. To know the room again on my terms. The brass hook where Mark used to hang his cap. The framed county fair photo of Grace and her brother Matthew, tongues blue from snow cones. The umbrella stand Mark insisted was too fancy, until he admitted he liked not losing things. I slid the key into the lock, felt the old bolt catch, and pushed the door open to the soft exhale of warm air and lemon cleaner. Voices carried the way voices do across a tidy house, light at first, then distinct if you let them. Laughter, then the rhythm of talk. I should have called out. I should have said, "It's me." Instead, I stood in the shadow of my own hallway and listened, because mothers listen by reflex, because I had missed so much of the visible world that I was greedy for the invisible. Tone, timing, the truth that leaks through when people think you can't see their faces. 2 minutes, I told myself, pinching the bridge of my nose the way Dr. Patel warned me not to. 2 minutes, then hello. I stepped out of my shoes, set them neatly on the mat, and took one quiet step closer to the kitchen glow, still full of the foolish bright hope that comes free with every miracle. The kitchen light spilled warm over the hardwood as I crept closer. My eyes were still adjusting, pupils greedy for every color, every shadow, every tilt of a face. Grace's laugh came first, bright on the surface, but with that brittle edge I'd trained myself to ignore for years. Cole answered with a low hum, the voice of a man who enjoys being agreed with. I should have called out then. "It's me, I'm home." That's what a normal mother would do after a day of miracles, but something in their tone froze me on the hallway rug, the one with the cranberry diamonds that always slides crooked no matter how much tape I stick under it. Maybe it was the sharpness in Grace's syllables, or maybe it was the way Cole exhaled, long and satisfied, like someone finishing a calculation. My body knew before my brain did. Don't move. Listen. Finally quiet, Grace said, clinking a spoon against her mug. I swear, if I have to keep guiding her hand to the bathroom much longer, I'll lose my mind. Cole chuckled. She won't last. We just need a few more weeks of, I don't know, documenting? Photos of her bumping into furniture, maybe? My nails pressed half moons into my palm. Documenting? Bumping into furniture? My daughter's voice again, casual as if planning a grocery run. Sunset Ridge Assisted Living has vacancies. The realtor said houses on the lake are moving fast. If we list before spring, we'll clear at least 450. Sunset Ridge. Realtor? 450. Each word landed like gravel in my mouth. My home, the porch Mark built, the maple tree Matthew carved his initials into, the living room where I nursed Grace through fevers, was a dollar sign to her. I took one step back, heel brushing the baseboard, heart a drum in my throat. "Your mom's savings plus the house," Cole said, his voice pitched like a coach drawing plays. "That's a new start. Whitefish has those condos near the ski lifts, remember? Modern kitchens, space for my office." Grace sighed the way she used to when I refused her curfew request at 16. 2 months tops. We'll say she's not safe here alone. Dr. Henderson owes me. He'll sign whatever form we need. I bit the inside of my cheek until the copper taste steadied me. Henderson, our family physician for 20 years, the one who brought soup when Mark was dying. The idea of his name mixed with theirs made bile rise. Every instinct screamed, storm in, slam my keys on the counter, shout, "I can see you, I can see everything." But my better angel, the one Mark always called my steel under the honey, whispered, "Wait. People reveal the most when they believe you blind." So I moved deliberately, like someone still half lost. I let my hand drag against the wall, as if tracing memory instead of sight. The kitchen doorway came into view, Grace, in her soft sweatshirt with the sleeves bunched at her wrists, scrolling Zillow like it was scripture. Cole, hunched over a notepad, numbers crawling across the page like ants. My heart clenched. What I wanted was the little girl in pigtails, who used to demand bedtime stories twice, who swore she'd live with me forever. Instead, here sat a stranger with my daughter's voice, dividing my life into assets. I cleared my throat, soft, just enough. Their heads snapped up, masks ready. "Mom, you're back," Grace sang, the false sweetness almost artful. She rushed toward me, guiding my elbow with practiced tenderness. "How are the eyes? Did the doctor say anything hopeful?" Behind her, Cole smiled too wide, his teeth like a lineup of polished lies. I forced my gaze down, feigning the cloudy stumble I'd perfected these last weeks. "Still shadows," I murmured. "Doctor says, maybe someday." The words tasted like ash, but the performance gave me what I craved, her visible relief. Relief that I was still blind, still manageable, still an obstacle she believed she could outwit. She pressed a cup into my hands, chamomile laced with too much honey, the way she always makes it for show. "Drink, Mom. Rest. We'll take care of everything." Her palm patted mine, gentle enough that an outsider would see devotion. Only I, and the bright new sight in my eyes, knew it was theater. I nodded, settling into the chair she pulled out for me. The steam fogged my glasses, hiding the tears that threatened. Grace went back to her phone, Cole to his notes, certain the play was still theirs to direct. I sipped, memorizing every line of their betrayal, every gesture rehearsed for the audience of a mother they thought lived in darkness. Inside, something sharp uncoiled. Vision was more than sight. Vision was seeing people for who they truly were. And now that my eyes were open, I couldn't close them again. That night, I lay in my own bed, pretending the shadows still owned me. Grace tiptoed past the door twice, whispering with Cole at the end of the hall. Convinced I couldn't see the glow of her phone lighting her face. I let my breathing stay heavy and uneven, the sound of a woman too tired to keep track. But inside my chest, my pulse was a hammer. From the crack beneath my door, I heard every word. "She can't keep bumbling around forever," Grace muttered. "Neighbors are starting to notice. Mrs. Lang asked if Mom was doing okay. We need to act before gossip spreads." Cole's voice was low, the way men sound when they think they're being strategic. "Relax. Henderson owes me. I covered his mess with the Camaro deal, remember? He'll sign whatever evaluation we need. Memory lapses, paranoia, maybe a touch of early dementia. If the paperwork says she's incompetent, no one questions it. My stomach twisted so violently I had to clench the quilt. Henderson. Mark trusted him. I trusted him. The doctor who saw me through pneumonia, who stitched Matthew's knee after football, who sent flowers when Mark passed. To hear his name bent into conspiracy felt like the floor giving way. Grace sighed. I just want it done. I can't keep spoon-feeding her soup like some saint. We should already be looking at listings. The house will fetch nearly $500 with the right updates. White cabinets, quartz counters, new master bath. Realtor said it's turnkey buyers who'll pay top dollar. I pressed a hand over my eyes, not to block sight. I had plenty of that now. But to block the truth of her words. My daughter was planning her dream kitchen, with the profit of selling the one place that had ever been truly mine. Cole again, ever the coach. We stick to the timeline. 2 months of staged incidents, burnt toast, misplaced pills, maybe a call to 911 claiming confusion. Henderson files the report. Judge approves assisted living. By May, the house is on the market. Grace laughed. My daughter laughed, as though she were planning a vacation. By Memorial Day, we could be in Montana, Cole. You in your office, me with a kitchen that actually photographs well for my channel. And Mom, safe somewhere else. Safe. The word struck like a slap. Not safe with family, not safe surrounded by love, but safe away from them. I curled tighter beneath the quilt, forcing my breath into the shallow rhythm of sleep. They moved down the stairs, their voices softer, but still reaching me. Talk of renovations, down payments, the way she'll never see it coming. They were right about one thing. I hadn't seen it coming. Not the accident, not the blindness, not the way my own child could twist care into performance. For weeks, I'd leaned on her, grateful for every note she scribbled, every guiding hand to the bathroom. And all the while, she was keeping score, like a landlord preparing to evict a tenant. I stared at the ceiling, tracing the faint cracks in the plaster Mark once promised he'd fix. My mind roamed back. Grace at 10, standing on this very bed to hang a paper chain for Christmas. Grace at 25, crying on the phone about student loans until I emptied my savings for her tuition. Grace at 30, insisting I co-sign for the apartment she swore she'd pay off quickly. Each memory was a bead, and together they formed a rosary of sacrifice I'd prayed too long. The hurt burned hot, then cooled into something harder. Steel under the honey. I heard Mark whisper again. I'd played blind once. Now I would play it longer, but not because I was weak. Because information was ammunition. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, padded to the dresser, and touched the small dish where Mark's wedding band still lay. Cold, smooth, steady. He would have known what to do. He would have reminded me that love is not a blank check, that family can be the sharpest blade. Downstairs, laughter drifted up again, muffled by the kitchen door. I leaned against the wall, listening through the old heating vent that carried sound like a radio. 2 months, Cole said. Maybe less, Grace replied. 2 months to erase me. I slid back beneath the quilt, the plan already beginning to bloom behind my eyes. If they thought blindness had made me powerless, they'd soon learn the danger of a woman who could see everything yet chose to act as though she couldn't. Sleep didn't come. It rarely does when betrayal plants itself in your chest like a stone you can't cough up. I stared at the faint glow of the digital clock, each number sharpening my awareness. 1, 13, 207, 341. Every hour dragged me further from the sweet relief of anesthesia and closer to the raw ache of knowing my own child was planning my disappearance. By dawn, I gave up the pretense of rest. I shuffled to the study, Mark's study really, where the oak desk still bore faint coffee rings and the leather chair carried the shape of his shoulders. The air smelled of dust and cedar polish. I sat, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the worn accordion folder labeled simply, Family. It was a scrapbook, though not the kind you show guests. Receipts, bank statements, letters folded until their creases threatened to tear. Each page told a story I'd tried to forget. The first envelope I opened was from the University of Wisconsin, stamped paid in full. $42,000. I remembered Grace's trembling voice on the phone. "Mom, if I don't finish my degree, I'll be stuck waiting tables forever. Dad would want me to have this chance." And I had said yes, of course, emptying the last of Mark's life insurance to cover it. I worked double shifts at the library circulation desk that year, smiling through the ache in my back. Next came the wedding invoices. Florist, catering, a bill from a lakeside venue with chandeliers I couldn't even pronounce. Total, $36,000. Grace had begged for the perfect day. I'd written the checks while telling myself Mark would have approved. When she walked down the aisle, I cried, not just for joy, but for relief that the girl I raised might finally be secure. Tucked between them was a lease agreement. First month's rent plus deposit, $2,400. Grace's signature shaky at the bottom. She had just left Cole once, after a fight big enough to scare her. "Just until I find my feet, Mom," she said. I co-signed anyway, knowing deep down she'd return to him. And she had. My guarantee became wasted ink. There was more. Orthodontist payments, car repairs, even the crumpled invoice for a laptop she claimed she needed to start fresh. Each one was a monument to the version of me who believed generosity would buy loyalty. I closed the folder before the tears smudged the ink. The house was quiet. Grace and Cole still asleep, sprawled across the guest room bed that had once hosted my sister's visits. I pressed my forehead against the cool wood of the desk and let memory unspool further back, to when Grace was still soft with childhood. The first time she rode a bike without training wheels, she flew down our gravel drive screaming, "Look, Mom, I'm flying!" She'd crashed into the mailbox, knees bleeding, but her grin was wide as the lake. I had scooped her up, kissed the grit from her palms, and thought, this is why I exist. The night Mark passed, I sat on the floor of our bedroom. Grace curled against me like the little girl she no longer was. She promised, through tears and snot, that she'd take care of me the way I took care of her. I clung to those words, a lifeline in grief. Now, years later, those promises tasted like ash. I walked to the window. The February sun was pale, spreading timid light over the frozen lake. Neighbors' houses lined the shore, each one holding its own quiet dramas. Mrs. Lang's husband battling Parkinson's. The Johnson boy shipped off to rehab. Families fight, stumble, forgive. But this wasn't a fight. This was a heist, planned by the very person I gave my life to raise. I touched the dish on the sill, where Mark's ring sat like a tiny moon. He used to twist it when he thought. "Don't give more than you can afford to lose, Annie," he'd warn. I always assumed he meant money. Now I understood he'd meant pieces of myself. The rage that followed was different from the sharp shock of the night before. This was colder, steadier. The kind that doesn't burn out but calcifies into resolve. Grace and Cole believed I was still blind, still fumbling in shadows. Fine. I would let them keep their stage. Let them rehearse every lie, every forged document, every calculation. Meanwhile, I would sharpen my own tools. For the first time since the accident, I saw not just with my eyes, but with my history. Every receipt, every sacrifice, every broken promise was evidence, not just in a courtroom sense, but in the court of my own heart. Proof that I'd been more mother than woman, and proof that it nearly destroyed me. I slid the folder back into the drawer, straightened my shoulders, and whispered into the empty study. No more. The morning after my long vigil in the study, I dressed with a care that hadn't touched me in months. I chose the navy wool coat Mark bought me the year we splurged in Chicago, the one with big buttons that always made me feel capable. I tied a scarf, pinned my hair, and slipped on sunglasses, not the clumsy medical shades, but my own. Grace had already left a note on the counter in her curvy handwriting. At yoga, back by noon. Don't try cooking. Soup's in the fridge. She'd drawn a heart at the end, as if hearts could plaster over betrayal. I tucked the note in my purse. It would serve as Exhibit A one day. The plan had formed during those sleepless hours. I needed an ally who wasn't blinded by guilt or obligation. I thought immediately of Richard Mallory, our old family lawyer. He handled Mark's estate, and he'd once told me, half joking, "Annie, if your kids ever try to railroad you, call me first." At the time, I laughed. Today, I dialed his office with steady hands. "Mrs. Hart," he boomed when I walked in, his voice still gravelly, his tie still stubbornly crooked. "I heard about your accident. How are you?" "Better than I let people think," I answered, lowering my glasses. His eyebrows shot up when he realized I was tracking him perfectly. "And I need you to keep it that way. For now." We shut the door, and I told him everything. The staged caretaking, the whispers about assisted living, the plan to sell my home, Henderson's name tossed around like a crooked dealer in a card game. Richard listened without interruption, his fingers steepled, his eyes sharp. "You're right to act," he said finally. "If they can get a doctor to declare you incompetent, they'll have standing to control everything. But you hold the cards right now. You're lucid, your vision's back, and we can document it." "I want the will changed," I said. The words surprised even me with how firm they sounded. "Everything goes to Matthew. Grace gets $1 for reasons she will understand." Richard whistled low. "That's definitive." "She's left me no choice." Within the hour, the paperwork was ready. I read every line carefully, savoring the clarity of each word. Signing my name didn't feel like cutting Grace off. It felt like reclaiming myself. When the ink dried, I exhaled as if I'd been holding my breath for years. "Do you want a copy?" Richard asked. "Yes," I said. "In fact, make it obvious. I want her to find it." He hesitated. "You're playing with fire, Annie." "I know," I said. "But sometimes you have to let people burn themselves." By early afternoon, I was back in my kitchen. The house smelled of lemon cleaner again, Grace's obsession with surfaces while the rot grew underneath. I placed the sealed envelope squarely on the counter, not hidden, not flaunted. Just there, waiting. Then I brewed tea and sat by the window, pretending to doze in the winter light. When the front door opened and I heard shopping bags thump against the floor, my pulse jumped, but my posture stayed loose. "Mom?" Grace called, saccharine as ever. "We brought dinner." Her footsteps reached the kitchen, then stopped dead. Silence, a rip of paper, a gasp sharp enough to cut glass. "Cole," she hissed. "Get in here. Now." I smiled into my teacup, the steam veiling me like a curtain. Every lie they'd rehearsed was about to collapse under its own weight. This was no longer their play. It was mine. Grace's gasp clanged through the kitchen like a dropped pan. I didn't move, just held my teacup steady, breathing in chamomile steam as if I were deaf to the rustle of paper. But my ears caught everything: the scrape of a chair, the shuffle of Cole's sneakers, the low curse he tried to swallow. "What the hell is this?" Grace's voice cracked. Cole snatched the papers. It's dated today. Annie Hart declares. Matthew Hart, sole heir, everything. His voice rose with each word, brittle with panic. She left you $1, for reasons she will understand. Jesus, Grace. For a beat, silence. Then her fist slammed the counter. She knows. They started pacing, their voices weaving like angry violin strings. No way, Cole muttered. She can barely pour tea without spilling. She couldn't get to Mallory's office alone. Then explain this, Grace snapped. Explain how she changed the will while we were gone. Maybe she's not as blind as she pretends. Maybe... Stop, he cut her off. She's manipulating you. Probably signed something confused. We'll call Henderson tomorrow, get the evaluation pushed. If she contests, we argue incompetence. Easy. Easy. That word broke me open. Easy to erase me? Easy to sell my house? Easy to carve up my life as if it were leftovers in their fridge. I set down my cup with deliberate quiet, folded the Afghan from my lap, and rose. My knees protested, but rage steadied me. I walked into the kitchen doorway, leaning against the frame like any tired old mother might. Grace spun, papers clenched in her hand, her face pale under her makeup. Cole froze mid-step, his confidence leaking away. Sweetheart, I said, my voice calm, clear, every syllable slicing the air. You won't need Dr. Henderson's lies, because I see and hear you perfectly well. Grace's mouth opened, shut, opened again. Mom, what do you mean? I mean, I said, stepping closer, that ever since my sight returned, I've watched you play nurse while plotting to bury me alive in paperwork. I mean, I saw your Zillow searches, heard your jokes about quartz countertops, and listened through these old vents while you planned my funeral in installments. Cole stammered. It was just talk. We were stressed. I cut him off with a look Mark used to call my librarian stare, the one that could silence a rowdy room. Don't insult me, Cole. You schemed with my daughter to sell the home her father built. You schemed to forge medical records, and you celebrated the thought of me gone. Grace's tears came fast, but I saw the calculation underneath. Mom, you don't understand. We just wanted what's best for you. Assisted living would mean safety, companionship. You wouldn't be alone. Don't twist care into chains, I said. If you wanted my safety, you'd sit with me, not circle my house with price tags. Her voice broke into a wail, but I knew that sound. It was the same cry she used at 13 when caught lying about a broken window. A tool, not truth. Please, Mom, don't do this. We can fix it. Tear up that will. We'll forget any of this happened. I let the silence hang until her words curdled in the air. Then I pointed to the counter, where 2 suitcases waited, Mark's old luggage, packed neatly with everything she and Cole had scattered through my house. No, I said. You will forget. You will forget this address, this roof, this porch. You will leave my home tonight. Cole's jaw tightened, his bravado flaring one last time. You can't just kick us out. We've lived here for months. We have rights. I smiled, but it wasn't kind. Guests don't have rights, and parasites don't either. The locks change tomorrow. Grace collapsed into a chair, the papers crumpling in her fist, her sobs echoing against the cabinets. Cole muttered curses under his breath, already calculating their next move. As for me, I stood straighter than I had in weeks. For the first time since the accident, I wasn't stumbling in the dark. I was blazing with sight of who my daughter had become, and sight of the strength I still carried. The reveal was over. The real war had just begun. Grace stayed in the chair, sobbing into her hands, while Cole paced like a caged dog. The suitcases sat between us, silent witnesses, stuffed with the very comforts they thought they could enjoy while mapping out my erasure. You're making a mistake, Annie, Cole finally snapped, voice sharp enough to cut the air. You can't just toss family into the street. Family? I repeated, tasting the word like vinegar. Family doesn't plot to sell your house while you're still living in it. Family doesn't fake doctor's notes to declare you incompetent. Grace lifted her tear-streaked face. Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. We were wrong. But I was so tired, so overwhelmed. You don't know what it's like taking care of someone who can't even see. Stop. My voice sliced through her excuses. You were never taking care of me. You were staging a performance. The tea, the notes, the fake concern. It was theater for a blind woman you thought couldn't judge your lines. She pushed herself up, stumbled toward me, clutching my arm. Please, Mom, I'll change. We'll stop talking about assisted living. We'll stay here and actually care for you. I swear it. Don't shut me out. I'm your daughter. I love you. Her touch used to comfort me. Tonight, it burned. I pulled my arm free. If love was what you felt, you wouldn't have called me a burden in my own home. You wouldn't have toasted my absence like a business deal. You don't love me, Grace. You love the inheritance you thought was guaranteed. The words landed like a slap. Her mouth trembled, but no defense came. Cole stepped in then, fury simmering. All right, enough of this guilt trip. You want to play tough, Annie? Fine. But you're old. You do need help. And you're not thinking straight. A judge will see that. You think one fancy new will is enough? We'll contest it. We'll drag you through court until you give up. I met his glare without flinching. Do you know how long I've lived with men puffing up their chests in this house? Mark had co-workers just like you, bluster and bluff. But he taught me something. Bluster collapses under truth. And the truth is simple, Cole. You and Grace are leaving tonight. Grace broke again, dropping to her knees on the kitchen tile. Her sobs were louder now, raw, scraping her throat. Mom, don't do this. You raised me. You can't just throw me away. I'll do better, I promise. I'll cook, I'll clean, I'll take you to every appointment. Please don't take everything from me. I bent slightly, forcing her to look at me. I gave you everything already. School, wedding, rent, even patience when you didn't deserve it. And what did you give back? Lies, schemes, a plan to erase me. I'm not throwing you away, Grace. You threw yourself away the moment you chose greed over love. Her sobs faltered into silence. She sat back on her heels, eyes glassy, realizing tears no longer moved me. Cole slammed a fist on the counter, rattling a mug. This is insane. We've been here for months. We'll call the police, tell them you're unstable. They'll side with us. I straightened my shoulders. Do it. Call. And when they arrive, I'll tell them about Dr. Henderson, about the forged paperwork, about the plan to stage accidents. I'll tell them every word you whispered through these vents, and I'll hand them my lawyer's number. Who do you think they'll believe? His jaw clenched, color draining from his face. Grace shot him a panicked look. For the first time, I saw doubt in his eyes. I moved toward the door, my finger resting on the lock. You wanted me gone so you could renovate? Consider it done. This house is yours no longer. Take your things. Go. Grace's shoulders shook with silent sobs, but she didn't argue again. Cole muttered curses under his breath as he grabbed one suitcase. The battle wasn't over, not yet, but the balance had shifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one begging. The air in the kitchen grew heavy, as if the walls themselves were waiting to see whether I meant what I said. Grace's sobs softened into hiccups. Cole, red-faced, dragged one of the suitcases toward the door, the wheels thumping against every seam in the hardwood like a drumbeat of defeat. Don't think this ends here, he muttered. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, my voice steady. But at least those regrets will be mine, not debts you've written in my name. Grace rose unsteadily, clutching the second suitcase. Her face was blotchy, mascara streaking down her cheeks. She looked less like the polished influencer she tried to present online, and more like the little girl who once cried when a doll's arm snapped. For a flicker, I almost reached for her. Almost. But then I saw the papers still clenched in her fist. The new will she'd tried to dismiss as a mistake, and the tenderness hardened back into stone. "You're really doing this?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, "and I should have done it years ago." Her lips parted as if to argue, then closed again. For once, she had no script. Cole yanked the door open, the February wind rushing in, carrying with it the sharp smell of lake ice. "Come on!" he barked, impatient. Grace lingered 1 second longer, eyes darting around the kitchen, as if she were trying to memorize the counters she dreamed of gutting, the cabinets she planned to paint white, the life she believed was already hers. Finally, she dragged the suitcase across the threshold. I followed them, stopping just inside as they wrestled their bags into the back of the Ford Escape. The car rocked with every slam of a door, every shove of luggage, every angry mutter between them. Grace looked up once, her eyes glassy, her mouth forming words she didn't say. Then she turned away, slid into the passenger seat, and stared straight ahead. The engine started, headlights cut across the snowbanks. With a squeal of tires on frozen gravel, the car lurched down the drive and disappeared around the bend. The silence that followed was a kind I hadn't heard in years. Not the silence of blindness, where the world shrinks to muffled echoes. Not the silence of grief after Mark's death, thick and unbearable. This was clean silence, honest. The kind that fills a house with peace instead of fear. I closed the door gently. The wind chimes on the porch shivered, their notes rising like applause. Room by room, I walked through my home. The guest bedroom stood bare at last. The bedspread smooth, the nightstand empty. No more clutter of Cole's gadgets or Grace's cosmetics spilling across the dresser. In the living room, the coffee table gleamed without his beer cans, without her stacks of shopping bags. In the bathroom, the counters were mine again. Just my toothbrush, my soap, my reflection in the mirror. Everywhere I looked, absence became a gift. In the kitchen, their abandoned grocery bags still sagged on the floor. I peeked inside. Frozen pizza, boxed wine, protein powder. All cheap conveniences they'd planned to devour while scheming about selling my life out from under me. I gathered them, walked out to the garbage can, and dropped everything in with a final, satisfying slam of the lid. Inside again, I returned to my favorite chair by the window. The lake stretched out beyond the glass, its frozen skin catching the moonlight like silver foil. I breathed deep, letting the calm seep into me. My hands no longer shook. My eyes, once betrayed by darkness, were sharp and clear. For the first time in months, I didn't have to pretend. I was alone, and it was glorious. The house was so still, I could hear the clock in the hallway mark each second, steady and unbothered. I let it wash over me, the rhythm of a place finally my own again. But I wasn't finished. I needed one more act of truth, not for Grace or Cole, but for myself. I picked up the phone from the end table. My fingers hesitated over the numbers I knew by heart. Matthew, my son, my steady one. He lived 2 states away, buried in work and children of his own, but his voice had always been the rope I could grab when the waves pulled me too far. He answered on the second ring. "Mom, it's late. Are you okay?" I closed my eyes, savoring the sound of him. I'm better than okay, sweetheart. But I need to tell you something, and you have to let me get through it without stopping me. All right, he said carefully. So I told him. About the accident. About pretending longer than I had to. About the whispers through the vents. The Zillow searches. The forged evaluation Henderson promised. The way Grace called me a burden. I spoke in a calm, measured voice, but each word carried the weight of months of silence. By the end, Matthew was quiet. Too quiet. Say something, I whispered. His breath hitched. I don't even know where to start, Mom. I knew Grace leaned on you too much, but to plot like that? To celebrate the idea of you locked away? I feel sick. I felt the same, I said softly. But listen to me. I handled it. They're gone. Out of this house. Out of my life. The will's been changed. They can't touch me now. He let out a long exhale. I wish I'd been there. I should have been. You went through this alone. No, I corrected him gently. I went through it stronger than I thought I could. That's what matters. There was a pause, then his voice softened. Let me come next weekend. The kids need to see their grandmother. And maybe it's time you moved closer. We'd love to have you near us. Not because you're a burden, Mom. Because you're ours. Because we want you. Tears stung, but these were different. Light. Not heavy. We'll talk about it, I said. For now, just promise to visit. I need to hear laughter in these rooms again, the kind that isn't fake. You've got my word, he said firmly. When I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. The house no longer pressed down on me like a tomb. It breathed with me, each beam and floorboard mine again. I stood, walked to the mantel, and began to rearrange the photos. The ones with Grace I slid gently into a drawer, not out of cruelty, but because they no longer told the truth of my family. I left the pictures of Matthew and his children, of Mark and me at our anniversary dinner, of summers by the lake when we were still whole. The mantel looked bare, yes, but also honest. Then I sat at Mark's old desk and opened a fresh legal pad. At the top, I wrote, Things to do. Call locksmith tomorrow. Remove Grace as emergency contact at the clinic. Lunch with Carol from book club. Visit Matthew soon. Plant tulips in spring. Simple things, but they were mine. The clock struck 11. I brewed one last cup of tea and carried it to the porch. Outside, the lake glowed under a quilt of moonlight. The wind chimes tinkled, and instead of sounding like a warning, they sounded like freedom. I sipped slowly, smiling to myself. For years, I thought love meant giving until I was empty. But tonight, I understood something better. Love also means drawing lines, defending your worth, refusing to be erased. I was no one's burden, and for the first time in too long, the future was mine.